Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is Ralph Hayes Jr., RH Jr., reality check, coming to you live over the internet through a series of tubes known as the boob tube we call YouTube, bringing you another broadcast of my little contribution to the clutter on the internet, Spleen Squeezins. I know I'm excited. Are you? Let's see here. It's just another day, another round of me wrestling with my personal demons and losing hard. Error, YouTube is not receiving enough video. I'm cramming it in. What do you expect me to do? What do you expect me to do? I really don't know. Is there anything I can adjust on this thing to make it stop, choking on itself? Probably not. Because there's probably some arcane little setting somewhere hidden that says, to switch from suck to not suck. Okay, stream health. Let's see. Stream health. Stream is healthy. Error. Stream is not healthy. Well, thank you very much. Well, as long as the video is okay, it starts out and then it just. Okay, concurrent viewers. We have one person. We have one person in channel. Who are you? Type something in the chat window so we know who you are. Plausible deniability. Okay. Let's see here. I'm gonna turn off the Spleen Squeezin's logo. If I can figure out which of these buttons is, and I forgot to put the music on random scramble. I hate this particular song, and yet it always pops up, right next. Stream health. Let's see here. Error. YouTube is not receiving enough video. What am I supposed to do about that? I know all these years I've never figured out what it is I'm supposed to do to fix that. Really. But here, let me turn off just header. Oh, that's the header. There we go. Nice big window. And you can see all my little connector thingies through there. Yeah. Okay. Frozen window. Yay. Excitement never stops. Let's see here. I'm pulling up my notes. I spent about an hour on the phone. I spent an hour. I finally managed to talk to the guy in Social Security. We finally managed to contact each other, and he's getting a bunch of updating a bunch of information. He's sending me some paperwork to sign and to send some other information back to him, and so on and so forth. It took 2 days to do this because the first time he called, my battery on my phone ran out before we were through. I've got one of these old-fashioned portable phones. The base plugs into the wall, but the phone, the phone receiver you can carry around with you. Problem is that the battery in it, only lasts about an hour. So if you're going to have a long discussion with somebody, could probably set it up to be loud. I don't know. I need to get if I'm going to have a wall phone, I need a more old phone, the one that runs off a cord. Because this guy talks slow. My phone's beeping, the battery's low, the battery's low, the battery's low, and he's talking slower and slower and slower. Okay, enable DVR. What's DVR? Does anybody know? I don't know what DVR is. It doesn't seem to make any difference whether it's on or off. Okay. Well, I'm waiting for somebody to log on or to say something in the chat window. Because according to this, I've got one concurrent viewer. And I'm sort of at a loss as to how to notify people. Hey, we're live streaming. Yay. Let's see. Does this do it? Allow embedding. Live chat. Enable live chat. Enable live chat. Enable slow mode. What's slow mode? No. None of that. Okay. Okay. But, if you're there, talk. Because, this is one of my pet peeves, and it's always a pet peeve. I walk it daily and feed it nommies. It's my pet peeve. I hate it when people log on to a channel, log on to a chat room, and just sit there and don't say anything. I know it's traditional. It's been traditional for people to be, lurkers since the dawn of the internet. I want that tradition to die. Okay? Don't clutter up my internet by just being there and taking up bandwidth. You're just making things harder for everybody else. The reason people have chat windows, the reason people have chat windows is to get live feedback. If you're not going to give live feedback, there's no point in you being on the channel. You might as well just watch the recorded tape. You suck it on my bandwidth. Okay, I'm just waiting for somebody to log on. There's really not much else I can do. I really don't know how to. This page does not have a notify everybody setting. Stream settings, analytics. You got to be out there, people. I've got to be here. You got to be there. Talk to me. No, I don't need a. I don't need to create a highlight thingy. I'm not sure I can do this. I'm trying to do something. What do they call it? Biodata extra something community web. What is the term for things like Tumblr and Facebook and all that social media. That's the term. They just okay. I'm using the live stream thing so that I can put a notice up on Facebook and Twitter that I'm live streaming in case anybody missed it. There we go. Hey, it's Chad. Chad. The most sinister man in the West, in the Southwest. Hanging Chad. Wanted since the 90s for obstructing the Bush election. Right, yeah. Yay, Chad. Glad to see you. Glad to see you. Well, glad to see your name typed into a digital page. But, yeah, you get my point. Okay. Yay. I know I'm excited. Are you excited? I'm thrilled. Okay, yeah. Big surprise. Trump got acquitted. Never saw that coming. I'm sorry, the Democrats were just going totally play school. You know, tantrum flinging in the daycare sandlot. Just not happening. And apparently, they screwed up their own caucus. They've already got people out there, ripping up on the Iowa thing. The corporations, Papa John's has a new ad out. Hey, Iowans, our app works. So, yeah. These people, just fresh from clown college, I swear. Rubber noses and big floppy shoes all around. Seriously, good night. Good night. How do you just? It's. I'm wondering seriously if the Democrat Party is going to exist as the entity it currently is beyond the next 10 years. They'll probably, they'll probably split and mutate and, you know, because there's, stupidity is timeless. It wouldn't be the first time people think all the Democrat Party and the Republican Party have been there for it. No, they haven't. This country is less than 300 years old, and we've had two or three different political parties over the course of our history. On each side and in the middle, and hanging off the ceiling, and so it could happen again. I mean, look this up. History student, kids, ask your history teacher about this one, the Bull Moose Party. All right. Now, let's see. Let's talking about things here. I wrote down some notes. I wrote notes. I wrote notes for this show. We're doomed. Okay, let's see here. It's an interesting thing. I was looking. Apparently it's become a thing now on YouTube where people will take forums from Reddit and run them through a digital voice simulator. Computer. Reddit question. Have you ever tried peanut butter with bananas? That kind of thing. And there's a couple of channels that do that, and people have been asking. One of the questions I saw, one of the questions I saw was, women of Reddit, what have you seen as they asked the women of Reddit what examples could they think of sexism against men, or what double standard for men, what is a double standard for men that you know about? And I noticed a lot of them. A lot of them were talking about, they talked about some straightforward things, issues about divorce and divorce laws and social strict, that a woman can haul off and hit a man. If a man, if a man lets a woman beat on him, he's a wimp. And if he smacks her back, it's worse. So no winning situation. If I sound a little odd, it's because I'm sort of curling my lip here. My front tooth chipped something awful, and it's got a little point here. It's not enough to cut, but it's enough to make my lips sore here, making it hard to talk. But one of the ones that kept coming up over and over and over again is women were saying that men weren't allowed to express their feelings. And they talked about that a lot. Men are expected to be manly, and they're not allowed to express their feelings, and it really seems unfair. And this is from, again, all women's perspective. But I gotta say, it seems that it's nice that women are empathetic about men, but they are very obsessed about men's feelings. They've got this hang up about men's feelings. Excuse me a minute. I hate this jazz number. It's always too loud. And they always talk about it. That's the problem. What the problem is that they're making some very basic assumptions here. Women are apparently under the impression that a man who doesn't, that men cannot have a healthy emotional life without, just throwing their emotions out all over the place. They assume that if a man doesn't emote like a woman, that he's not being healthy. That he's repressing his emotions. That's they believe he doesn't have a healthy emotional life if he doesn't express his feelings all over the place. That's like assuming a woman doesn't have that's like assuming a woman doesn't experience sexual arousal because she doesn't get an erection. Which in the Victorian era they kind of did. People assume that women didn't enjoy sex. Why? Because they did. Because it wasn't as obvious as it was with a man. So real. The Victorians had issues, but men is just they don't realize that these women. We appreciate them being sensitive to the issue and understanding that men do hurt, but they're overstating the importance of expressing it. For a woman, this is my perspective from what I've seen, and from what I've learned, and from what psychiatrists have said. Women are much more, women are biologically speaking much more social animals than men. They're more about intersocializing than men are. Men are more about competing. And so, for a woman, expressing one's emotions to one's peers is a viable social strategy. It's a viable emotional strategy. But men aren't built that way. There are times we need to, break down and weep, or or celebrate, or express our feelings in some other way. But we don't need it as much or as consistently as women do. Women and men have different emotional lives. And We are designed to handle our emotions differently. This is one of the fundamental problems we have with feminism is that feminism refuses to acknowledge that many of the differences between how women and men behave culturally are not necessarily cultural debris. That there is an actual innate biological root to why men act in a certain way and why women act in a certain way. And it can be a lot subtler than these social activists are willing to accept. Uh, it's violent whether you believe the biblical record or the Darwinist record of how humanity formed and how we both have certain beliefs in common, understanding in common about how early man and early woman are and were. And one of the fundamental things is look at a man body. It comes down to basic biology. The man and the woman. The woman is biologically designed to give birth, which comes with a lot of baggage, including which is that being designed to give birth, being designed to give birth to a child, being designed to give birth to a child that is going to spend a long time as a child, means that it makes more sense for her to be the one who breastfeeds, for one. It also means it makes more sense for her to be the home, to be more focused on the homemaking and uh, you know social interknitting that comes with the tribe. It wasn't being a housewife wasn't just invented by men who wanted to keep women in their place. Okay, and in the role of the man, because he is larger, because he has more upper body strength, and a different set of hormonal and biological imperatives. I'm scrambling my words here a little bit. A man is better suited to be the one who goes out and thwacks the woolly mammoth over the head with a club, drags it home for the woman to cook. And we're talking. This is a fundamental arrangement that regardless of whether you believe the record of Genesis or the record of Darwin, that's been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and it's rooted in our genetics. So the idea that men and women, regardless of how fair, people are more interested in us being treated equally than being treated fairly. Think about that. Think about that carefully. These social justice warriors are more interested in everybody being treated equally than in everybody being treated fairly. Now I ask you, all equal and everything, but would it be fair to make a kid in a wheelchair compete on on the basketball team? Hello. Equality isn't always necessarily synonymous with fairness, and fairness isn't always synonymous with equality. And the problem is that they mistake identically for equal as well. It's not fair that men can walk around without their shirts on, and they rip off their bras and they go around bump them bump them bump them bump them bump them bump them. Yeah, and 10 years later they regret it when their nipples are down to their navel, but precisely, a woman's emotional processing is optimized for child rearing. A man's emotional processing is optimized for protecting the home, defending home and hearth and providing for it. The roles of homemaker and breadwinner were not invented in the 1940s, contrary to what the feminists preach. It wasn't invented in the 1800s. It wasn't invented in the Dark Ages either. It's as old as humanity. How we interpret those roles and how we fulfill those roles changes just a little bit, but the deep rooted fundamentals never do. Yeah. And the problem is that nobody wants to hear that. And uh, social justice warriors, the SJWs, leftism is all about ranting and raving about what they don't want to hear. I don't want to hear that. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, and plugging their ears. Or or putting a gag in everybody else's mouth so they don't have to hear it. It's a fundamental problem. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's just skipping topics for a minute. Enrique Iglesias. Enrique Iglesias. He is a Mexican American comedian, big fella. Big round guy. Hey Fluffy. I'm not fat. I'm fluffy. That was one of his earliest jokes, and. There is one clip that's going the rounds in YouTube. He describes a prank he and his friend uh, pulled on another comedian, G. Riley. He and Martin, pulled a prank on their friend G. Riley, who is also a comedian. He's a black man. And they were passing, basically he and, Fluffy and Martine were driving through Fresno one day, and they happened to see billboards up that G. Riley was in town and was going to be performing at such and such theater, and with such and such theater out of such and such hotel. And they're like, dude, we haven't seen him in ages. Let's stop in and say hi. And when they pull, and they pull in, they find the hotel, and basically, that little devil hopped out on Enrique Iglesias' shoulder and said, "Let's pull a prank." And he said, let's mess with him a little. He doesn't know we're here. I'm going to call up and tell him he's got a gift basket waiting for him in the lobby. And I'm just going to describe that basket, and it's going to be full of all the things that, a black person might like, stereotypically, so to speak. And he said, here's a better idea. Here, we got about an hour. Let's go down to the grocery store and make a gift basket. And we'll fill it with all this stuff and have them take it up to his room, and then we'll watch and see what happens. And are you down? And yeah, they went to a grocery store, and they found an Easter basket and threw out all the stuff, and then he started getting stuff. First thing he got was like a little fried chicken, one of those little fried chickens from the deli, and stuck it in the basket. And Martine comes around with a little one of those little miniature watermelons and sticks it in the basket. And the next thing they know, the people at the store who are working there are helping them make this basket. They find out what these two guys are up to, and that they're going to be pulling this racist prank on their friend. And they start stuffing it. And by the time half of the workers were black, which, as he put it, just made it that more accurate. And he said they put. Let's see. He said by the time they were done, that basket had fried chicken, grape soda, a watermelon, Kool-Aid, a rack of ribs, and he just lists off all these things they put in this basket, and and they stuffed it in, and it made it, and they wrapped it all up, and made it look real nice, and they took it to the hotel. And they go up there and they put it there, and there was a black girl waiting at the counter, working at the counter, and do I smell chicken? And they explained to him, they explained to her, that they were friends of G. Riley, and they were going to pull a prank on him with this basket. And and she looked at him, she just gave him one of those looks, with the slow head shake. And she says, y'all need Jesus is what you need. And he said, what would really make this hilarious is if you take it up for him. She's like, oh no, I'm not going. You're going to ask a black woman to take this basket, this racist basket, up to a black man up in a hotel. Oh Lord, no, what is wrong with you? Yeah, I ain't going to do it. I don't care who you are. I said, we'll pay you 50. She says, where that son of a beat bat, and they follow behind her, and then they hide around a corner. And she goes up, knocks on his door, and gives him the basket. And they sneak up to the door and they listen. He gets that basket, and they hear him rip it open. Oh, chicken! And he's like, Kool-Aid, grape soda, sesame seed, malt liquor, and he's getting thrilled over every single item in the basket. And finally, he gets out what they had done. They had for the finishing touch on our way out of the grocery store. They found a card, a greeting card that was left over from Halloween, and it had 3 ghosts in sheets on the front. They tore, Fluffy, he tore off the part that, said Happy Halloween, and on the back of the card he wrote, best wishes, the Fresno Chamber of Commerce, and stuck it on the basket. And they were listening at the door, and they could hear him. They could hear the moment he turned the card over. He's, oh man, this is great. This is nice. Chamber of Commerce. What the hell? and they just, boom, they just hit the floor. And he comes around, and they go up there. They knock on the door, and he says, "Who is it?" It was too perfect. Chamber of Commerce. He comes. He yanks the door open. He's ready to throw down. He comes out. Who is it? And he sees them just lying there. And he's like, oh. He just about has. He said, you just about gave a brother a heart attack. And they go back and and they ask him, did you like your basket? He said, oh man, I love all that crap. And I was sitting there, I'm thinking, it's hysterical. It gets funnier every time I hear it. And it struck me, though. I thought about that. And I'm listening to, fried chicken and watermelon and grape soda and Kool-Aid. And I'm listening to all the, ribs. And I'm, oh, my word. And I'm sitting there, I'm starting to lick my lips. And I'm wondering, who the heck decided this was just a black thing? And who the heck decided it was racist? Man, if you give me a platter of all that stuff, all that stuff, well, not the, the cigarettes or anything, or the condoms or anything, or the malt liquor, but all the food and stuff, cornbread, cornbread and ribs, and says, and I try to hand it to a black. If I hand, oh, I can't believe you handed it. That's racist. I'm like, fine, more for me. I was raised on most of that stuff, I was fried chicken. Man, and watermelon. If we could get a watermelon, it was a summer holiday, If I was a black man, and if I was a black man and somebody set that platter down in front of me and then I had a friend, oh, you can't be accepting that. That's a racist insult. I'm just like, shut up. I'm getting fried chicken. If you don't want none, I'll eat the watermelon, man. Get out of here. If this is how they're going to be racist to me, give me free food, hey. People getting offended at the stupidest thing. If good grief. People are so busy being offended. I mean, if you're going to be all that offended at all the things on the list, eventually you ain't going to be able to eat nothing. Because everything they hand you is racist. And I'm like, dang, who decided it was a blacks only thing anyway? I mean, it's not like white people don't eat soul food. You go down south, they know how to eat. They want to, if I'm a race or an ethnic group or whatever, and they want to associate me with like, barbecued ribs, I'm like, I don't care. Give me more. I mean, that's like complaining. They talk about how black men supposedly have large. I mean, if they're going to have a racist stereotype about you, I mean, can you just? Excuse me, sir. Is it really true what the racists say that black men have really large? Well, actually, ma'am. Yes, it's absolutely true. Seriously, man. It might be prejudice, but I wouldn't be correcting nobody. Yeah, it's stupid. People are stupid about it. It's like everybody walking around with a get offended scorecard. Punch the most holes, win a free pizza or something. I don't know. What a bunch of knobs. And it gets really awkward when the stereotype's true. I mean, I hate to point it out to you, but the percentage of African Americans in the NVA is not exactly accidental. I've never seen Blazing Saddles. I've never seen it. I've only seen clips of it. Little split second clips and heard quotes from it, and that much. I don't know. Everybody keeling over dead lately. Who was it died recently? He's 103 years old. Some actor in Hollywood. 103, man. That's pushing the limit. I get a little disgruntled about that sometimes. I'm like, okay, sometimes I want to go, okay, God, the first half of first part of the Bible, everybody was living 4, 5, 6, 700 years. Could you think you could chop off a few extra decades and shove them over in our direction up here in the future? Can't get nothing done. Can you imagine being 100 years old and just being starting out in life? Crap. Everybody says it couldn't be made today. I don't know, man. It could, but people would complain about it for all the different for entirely. They would make it. It's just that everybody who was complaining about it would be entirely different groups of people complaining about it for entirely different reasons. Mark Twain. You take Mark Twain. Uh, his book Tom Sawyer. His book Huckleberry Finn. When it first came out, people make a fuss back in the 80s and 90s. Oh, this is racist. Generally dummies who never read any of Mark Twain's work, particularly those books. But it's so racist. But back when it first came out, people were always talking. People ranted and roared and huffed and snuffed and huffed and puffed about how it encourages, it encourages truancy in boys and teaches them to disrespect their elders. That's the funny thing was, everybody was freaking out about Huckleberry Finn. The thing of it was, is even Mark Twain was going, Tom Sawyer was way more subversive. Back when Mark Twain wrote Tom Sawyer, it was very common to write children's books about, Peter Perfect type characters, who were always good and who were rewarded at the end of the story, with some great accomplishment or something. And they were basically handed out, with the piety of Bible tracts. And Tom Sawyer was a response to that. Tom Sawyer, disobedient, rebellious, sneaky, dishonest, manipulative. The kid was practically a sociopath. Jeez, or maybe just an amoral little brat. And he poked, Tom Sawyer poked massive fun at the good little boy does good stories that were common at the time. In fact, it ends with Tom Sawyer getting a share of a huge treasure that Injun Joe had hidden. And his goody two shoes younger brother, Sid, getting his ears boxed and getting kicked out the front door. And a certain amount of commentary about social hypocrisy there is that, everybody thought Tom Sawyer was a no account hellion up until he suddenly became famous and rich. At which point they were saying, "Oh, he's a success story. I always knew he'd make good," and Sid got kicked to the curb. Okay, Mr. Cartoon Critic. We got Chad Dickhog. We got Chad. We got Mr. Cartoon Critic. And the funny thing was is that when he came out with Huckleberry Finn, everybody forgot about it. Nobody really noticed the impieties of Tom Sawyer. Mostly about him. They were more got their tail more in knots over Huckleberry Finn and him associating with the runaway slave. And they freaked out over that one. So basically, the saying that they could never make it today. Yes, they could. It would be just different moralists complaining about it. It is conservation. Call it conservation of social pseudo morality. Consider this. You look at how women dress today, and you look how they dressed back in the Victorian era. Oh, women were so much more modest back in the day. The skirt lengths were longer, all the way down to the floor, but their décolletage, their cleavage line was all the way down to the nipples. It's more like the hemlines just moved around on the clothes over the centuries. Sleeves went short, sleeves went long. Skirt went up, skirt went down. But the net average amount of skin being shown per value of salaciousness stayed about the same. We got women that got miles of legs showing, but not nearly as much boob as their great grandparents did. Of course, I think the woke brigade is sort of getting its power broken. I think they've they're being lulled back into the torpor they were before. They arose in the 60s and 70s and made everybody miserable, and then the 80s and early 90s they sort of lost steam and sort of slumped into hibernation. And then they came roaring back in the 2000s. I think they're due for another nap. because it's cost them. Kowtowing to feminist system has cost the Hollywood and the TV companies and everybody else. It costs them great tremendously. They're suffering great, huge, horrendous wounds across their economy. They basically destroyed the most bulletproof franchise for the past 50 years, Star Wars. Even George Lucas couldn't really crash and burn that one quite as thoroughly as the Disney Corporation did, trying to pander to feminists. The Ghostbusters nearly died, but they managed to resuscitate it. This new Ghostbusters Afterlife that's coming out, it looks much better, basically because they pretend that Ghostbusters 2016 never happened. And there's a lot of TV shows that have just imploded, and the ones they deliberately try to destroy keep rebounding, even though they go against the grain. Yeah. The Democrats did. They overextended. They've done nothing for the past half century but try to get any duly elected conservative president impeached. They're a bunch of do-nothings. They can't seem to do anything that isn't something that would hurt America. I love these people who say, if we could get rid of this bipartisanship, Congress would actually get something done. And I'm like, and you think you would like that? One of God's blessings upon the face of the earth is that most of Congress, is tangled up in a perpetual traffic jam. So they can't do to us what most of them are conspiring to do. That was largely the point of why they made so many, made the Senate and the House of Representatives and the judiciary and the executives and so forth, to make enough branches of office to balance the power out, so that if one tried to go into some sort of excess, that the others could gridlock them. The only thing that saved this country is the Congress's inability to get along. There's a new chapter up. I've written a new chapter, El Arira. Again, it's on space battles and sufficient velocity. I still haven't got access to Archive of Our Own back yet. Won't get it back until the 19th. I need to get to a dentist, but getting to a dentist, going anywhere for me is an ordeal because of my condition and my situation. And it infuriates me that I could go ahead and make an appointment to see my doctor or to see a dentist, but I have no guarantee that the taxi drivers would even be able to get me there. Because I've gone through this before. I've called, made an arrangement, called out a taxi cab. I was hoping, maybe this time I'll be, and I wasn't even able to get into the van. So it's a frustrating situation, and there's a service here that provides free help to transport people around like that, but I have to be at least 60 years old before they'll even talk to me. It's for ages 60 and over. And I'm like, great, I'll wait. I'll just wait 10 years to have an appointment with my dentist. because you guys are the only ones out here with a vehicle equipped to handle somebody in my physical condition. I've griped about this before. It just gets on my nerves. I have to see my doctor sometime this year, or I'll go off his rolls, which causes all sorts of paperwork problems, just for starters. Eh. Anyway. Uh, like I said before, if I'm talking a little funny, it's because I'm sort of having to keep my lip curled. I've got a front tooth that chipped, just crumbled basically. Got a big, got a little divot in it, a little, sharp edge. And it's not sharp enough to really cut, but it's enough to abrade, so it'd make my lips sore if I talk too much. Kind of a drag. Okay. Anyway. Let's see. Uh. Yeah. Anyway, like I was saying, there's a new chapter of El Arira up. You'll have to find it on Space Vitals or Sufficient Velocity. Now, it's an asked if, will you be doing story time again? Okay, why don't I do story time? Let's see here. Do I have one? No, that's not it. Ta-da! We'll do story time! Yay! Okay. I'm going to wait. I'm going to give it a second. We got 4 people in the channel. Okay. Do you have any story that you'd like me to read? I'm going to leave the floor open for anybody who wants to name one of those, one of my fan fictions, one of my stories that they'd like to hear me read it aloud. After about let's say 10 minutes, we'll pick a story, and I'll read it out loud for all the good little childrens. How's that sound? Does that sound good? It better sound good, because everybody asked for it. Oh, by the way, if you go to my website, www.rhjunior.com, I am offering, for a limited time, for the month of February, Valentine's Day, Valentine's commissions. Color commission, 1 or 2 characters, Valentine's greeting, $50 straight, $50 even. You hit the button at the bottom, make the payment. I contact you via email, get the description of the card you want drawn. I draw it. I will send a copy to you. An email to I will email a copy to you. Email a copy to the person you want it sent to, if that's what you want. And I will post it on the website for everybody to enjoy and share. I really wish this tooth would just fall out. I've got two teeth that are crumbled down to like little points, just a little stub. And I'm waiting for them to fall out. I've already lost a couple of teeth. And naturally, of course, I've got to go for the pumpkin look, the jack-o'-lantern look, and one of my front teeth develops a cavity and starts to crumble. And I go to a dentist. I'm like, dang it, I don't, we can save this tooth. And I'm like, for what? The tooth fairy? I'm like, if a tooth is really bad, and I've gone to the dentist, and if pieces are breaking off the tooth, I'm going to be, pull it out. Just take it out. That has got to be simpler than trying to, nutty putty it back together. Okay, we got Chad, we got Mr. Cartoon Critic, we got two other people here that have not said anything. We know you're there. We're tracking you down by the smell. Come on, say something. Put something in the chat window, and we'll take off from there. Teeth. So they're not going to talk. Another chapter of Darth Vulcan. What chapter did we let off at? It has been so long since I've done story time. I don't know what chapter have I read so far. No answer. Well, that's lovely. Well, okay, you got one vote for Darth Vulcan. And I'm putting in a vote for I'm just it's 3 chapters. I was going to read I was going to read one of the short ones, either El Arira or The Thunder Rolls. El Arira is the one where Izuku turns into a rabbit. The Thunder Rolls is where Izuku turns into Captain Marvel. Only the first chapter? Okay, second chapter would be okay. Alright. 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 Yeah. Okay, silent skulkers in the background. Your time is running out to say something. Let's see here. Don't you love these high quality, professional, technical quality, you know, these high quality, production values? Okay, this is just the opening. Okay, but believe chapter 2. We'll go with chapter 2. The Rise of Darth Vulcan. Chapter 2. Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. It's the simplest holiday for one reason: no social obligations. Okay, no weird relatives visiting or traveling 1,000 miles to visit them yourself. No awkward family dinners. No struggling to buy just the right card or just the right gift. No desperate flop sweat while you wait to see if that special someone sends you a Valentine back. Now, the only expectation is maybe you have a tub of candy to hand out to the little nose pickers when they come to the door. Other than that, it's just costumes, parties, candy, pranks. What's not to love? Yeah, especially the costumes. Yeah, I love doing costumes, even though I don't do it as much anymore. Hey, not everyone can run off to a con at the drop of a hat. And anyway, if I ever showed up at one of those nerd herds these days, the guys back home would never let me live it down. Yeah. I'm a peer pressure driven puss. Get it out of your system. Yeah, whatever. I'm just not stupid and socially tone deaf. Unlike geek boys, I remember that I do have to go to school and work and shit with regular people after the party's over. Now, you go prancing around dressed like Batman in public all the time, and then act all astonished and hurt when people laugh at you later. You deserve what you got. Now, me, I keep it to socially acceptable norms. As in Halloween. Now, of course, at the current year, I was kind of stumped for ideas. Now, I was sifting through the debris of an old curiosity shop looking for inspiration. I'd had a pretty good run the previous couple of years. Last year, I'd managed to score an old Darth Vader helmet at a Goodwill store, thrown on a cape and farmhand style overalls, and gone as Darth Bubba. Oh, shoot, son, come on over to the dark side. It'll be a hoot. That'd have been worth a few laughs. I wasn't finding anything interesting on the shelves, and I was about to a point where I was seriously considering wearing last year's costume again. Sacrilege. When there was this enormous bang somewhere overhead. The shelves around me rattled and jumped. I yipped and hopped out of the way as some of the items hanging overhead came tumbling down. After my pulse slowed down, I checked the shelves overhead where the bang had come from. I figured one of the plugged-in displays had blown a bulb or something. Oh, well, sure enough, there was a ruptured lava lamp and what looked like the remains of a plasma ball. The bits were scorched and smoking faintly. It looked like a power surge had hit the socket they were plugged into. A couple of other electronic widgets were flickering or acting like they'd burned out, too. The crazy old coot who ran the store always plugged too many things into one socket. I let the owner know what had happened. He came up the aisle, griped and moaned when he saw the mess, and started untangling cords and unplugging burnt-out novelty junk. While he was pulling the ruined merchandise off the shelf, I noticed a stray piece of junk jewelry in the middle of it. It must have fallen off the rack above the display. I reached over his shoulder and plucked it out of the mess. I don't know why it caught my eye. It wasn't particularly flashy at first glance. It was made of some dull gray metal with a gem at the center the color of dried blood. It had bird wings and a unicorn head. I'm so not into unicorns or anything fancy fairy tale like that, but the more I looked at it, the more gnarly it seemed. Like it looks sort of like the sort of medal an evil overlord would give one of his minions for terrorizing the highest number of helpless peasants that month, or for shooting down the most heroic rebels. I started to have a rush of inspiration to the head. "Hey, how much for this?" I said. He barely looked and rattled off a price. I parted with some filthy lucre and claimed my prize. When I got home with it, I got my old Darth Vader costume parts and went to work. Have you ever looked at a old original Darth Vader costume? I mean, really step back and look at it. It's actually kind of, well, weak. It gives an impression of badass armor at first, but you look again, you realize the helmet is kind of plain. The shoulders are sloped and narrow. The panel of buttons on the front of the suit looks like a vandalized jukebox. And the gauntlets and boots were just cloth, and the actual torso is nothing but a onesie made out of quilted cloth. I decided, why settle for Darth Vader? Why not take the old school Darth Vader and see if I could crank it up to 11? Okay, first off, I added some huge swept back horns to the helmet on either side. Yeah, I had some glowing eye spectacles from an old faceless ghost mask. I hot glowed those to the inside of the helmet so that Darth Vader's black beetle eyes now glowed hellish red on command. A battery powered voice changer went inside the mouth. No wheezy rasp for me. This thing made me sound like I gargled sulfur every morning for breakfast. Now I'm a dab hand with simple mechanical devices. I'd recut and rig the face of the helmet so it could pop up and sort of slide up into the crown of the helmet. After all, I wanted to be able to eat and drink while I was running around in this getup without pulling the entire helmet off. Now, the bodysuit was cheap of black coveralls. Now, I upped the ante by adding some spike plates, elbow plates, shin plates, knee plates, shoulder plates. A pair of big black stompy boots I'd spotted at some ex-goth's yard sale may serve for footwear. I had fake metal gauntlets from an old suit of armor. A fake suit of armor. It replaced Vader's Naugahyde gloves. And his cloak went by the wayside too. I had an old black fuzzy bathrobe that had fallen afoul of my sister's attempt to stonewash her jeans by throwing a chunk of brick into the washing machine. It was ratty and tattered and coming unraveled in places so much it looked like dead Muppet roadkill. A little work with a pair of scissors though, and it made a perfect barbarian skin cloak. Muppet Slayer. Got to remember that one for next year. I wavered the longest time on the weapon of choice. I wanted to make a sort of cross between a lightsaber and Skeletor's sword, but I spent too long dithering about how to make the blade. I ended up bunting and made a staff out of a 6-foot stick of driftwood I'd found and a fist-sized ceramic skull. It was less more Dark Jedi and more Evil Overlord, but what the heck. The final touch though was the amulet, which I slung around the neck of the gorget, the thing that goes around the neck, and pop riveted into place, so the pendant rested right at my collarbone. And yeah, I put lifts in the boots. I topped out at over 6 feet tall with them. Short Sith Lord? Never. That and black paint. Loads and loads of high-gloss metallic black paint. I'll tell you, I put that outfit on and I looked jagged. I was so grimdark you'd think I shit bats. I looked like the guy Emperor Palpatine would call boss. Anakin Skywalker would have wet his Jedi robes if he'd run into me. "Oh yeah," I said to my reflection, the voice changer turning my voice into a rumbling gravel basso. "I am gonna own this party." Halloween finally came. Someone, I forget who, I think it was the guys from the football team, they'd gotten together the stuff for a blowout party. It seems one of them lived in some virtual mansion out in the boonies, a converted farmhouse or something, sitting on a few hundred acres surrounded by woods. You know how rich people do when they buy someplace away from all the peasants. Anyway, it meant plenty of room for a few hundred teenagers, their cars and trucks, and the makings of an enormous Halloween costume party slash rave slash tailgate party. Pretty much the entire senior class and half of the underclassmen were invited, and the rest crashed. Nobody cared though. As long as you brought a cooler full of something to eat or drink, you were golden. I arrived and parked my van on the edge of the town of the lawn. The house was lit up, the music was blasting. There were high schooler ghouls and ghosties as far as the eye could see. Oh Lord, cheerleaders in bad little witch outfits. Oh. I bagged a can of beer and some ribs from some dude's tailgate grill and rocked my way into the throng. Massive rounds of thumb ups from all over the place for the outfit. Pretty soon I was chatting up some hot chick dressed in a naughty zombie French maid costume. Bonus points for a two-theme costume. Double bonus points for making it any variation of naughty and making it work. Ding ding. And making one hell of a good impression, I might add. And there was a commotion nearby. There's some laughter from a couple of jocks, and staggering up through the masses, propelled by a couple of trips and shove comes... I don't know, it takes me a minute to figure it out. His hair is blue, his face is white, he's wearing some sort of Roman guard armor, and he has a spiral horn jutting up from his forehead. Ah, crap, it was a brony. Some loser had come to the party as a brony. Okay, look. I don't follow all that trending internet stuff. It was hard not to know about these effeminate little weirdos. They were popping up everywhere. We even had a couple running around the halls of our Jerkwater Town High School. Dudes running around collecting little girls' toys and wearing t-shirts with cartoon ponies on them and crap. It was girly as hell and creepy as hell, too. In fact, I thought I recognized this one. Some dork who had a locker a couple of steps down from mine. Joe or Fred or Mike or something. Who cared? He used to be kind of cool, I guess, or at least not a booger-eating loser. And then he started showing up at a school in a t-shirt with some gray little cross-eyed pony on it. What the hell did derpy rules mean anyway? Yeah, that was it. He was a laughingstock by the end of the day. What made it worse is that he didn't even seem to care. It made me wonder if he was retarded or something. I gave him the once over. Side note, black Darth Vader mask with glowing glass eyes. Perfect stone face for scoping people out. He'd done a good job on the costume. That sort of made it worse. He'd used white body paint on his face and arms. His hands were painted black, and his face was touched up a bit to make it look more horsey. He had a pretty good prosthetic horn and ears sticking out from under his blue wig. The wig ran down the back of his neck and down the spine between his shoulders. It was actually glued in place, making it into a mane. He had a ponytail of the same blue color and as an actual tail, not the hairdo. And he was wearing boots that made his feet sort of look like hooves. The rest of his outfit was a sort of cheap off the shelf suit of Roman centurion armor. "What the hell are you supposed to be?" I blurted out. "A gay one," somebody in the surrounding crowd shouted. Everyone hooted. Joe or Fred, Nick, that was his name, Nick, just snorted and brushed himself off. He gave me the once-over right back. "Ted," he said, his brows furrowing. "That you in there?" I froze. "Yeah, it's gotta be you," Nick laughed. "Only Ted would put that much hardcore effort into a Halloween costume. So what's up?" This is what made him personally annoying. He was still all the time trying to hang around me. Howdy, hi, how you doing, what's up? Acting like we were best buds or something. Hey, have you seen my date? Your date? I repeated. Yeah, she's wearing a Rainbow Dash costume. Like I knew who the hell Rainbow Dash was. And furthermore, yeah, girlfriend. Right. Look, I don't know you, dude, I said. My voice rasped through the microphone. Well, sure, we got lockers next to each other. Heck, my mom knows your mom. Hey, I said I don't know you, man, I growled. Fine, whatever. Nice costume anyway, Ted. He looked at me again and grinned. Cool pony reference. What? The alicorn amulet. He pointed at my collarbone. So what? You're supposed to be Darth Trixie or something? What? Someone around us got the joke and laughed. I didn't. I could hear a couple of the kids standing around making remarks and laughing. Nick started to laugh. Dude, you don't know what that is? He said. The zombie maid hottie rolled her eyes and backed away from us both. Great. Loser by association. I got pissed. Nothing makes me madder than people making fun of me with references I don't understand. We were near the edge of the party out by the woods. I grabbed the dork by his arm and dragged him off to the tree line. Once we were out of earshot, I let him go and glared at him. What the hell? He said, rubbing his arm. What is wrong with you? I snapped. Don't you get what a freak everyone thinks you are? Nick rolled his eyes as he kneaded his shoulder. Why, no, Ted, he said. I never would have guessed that. Thank you for pointing that out. You are so insightful. And I should care because... He looked at me. And you don't? I said. Hey, what would be the point? Nick shrugged. Look, I'm not a dummy. Most fanboys, Trekkies, anime fans, furries, whatever, they get all hurt and outraged when nobody treats them like the rare and precious snowflake they think they are. I knew the moment I started watching the show, the people would give me crap about it. I accepted it. The real question is why you care so much about what people think. Look, dumbass, I don't get your stupid brony jokes, okay? I said. Just stay away from me and quit making me look like a loser. Nick curled his lip at me. Like you needed any help with that, he said. He flicked the medallion on my chest with a finger. You don't want to hang out with bronies. Maybe you shouldn't wear a prop from the show around your neck. What? He laughed. Ted, that's a replica of the alicorn amulet, he said. It's from the third season of the show. You might as well be wearing a Dayglow t-shirt that says Brony Fanboy on the front. What? I'd been walking around all night with a gay wad pretty pony princess jewelry on my chest. I felt like an idiot. I picked up some sort of brony junk at the curio shop and riveted onto my $300 costume without even realizing it. I felt my anger just explode. I swore and grabbed the medallion, trying to tear it off. Trying, I said, because it didn't budge. The hell? I muttered, giving the thing a yank. Nope, it wouldn't budge. Baffled and frustrated, I tried to pull the gorget off it was riveted to instead. That wouldn't come off either. I went from angry to furious. I must have gotten glue on the stupid seams or something. I flipped up my visors so I could get my fingers under the collar at my chin. Nick's face went from amused to surprised. Whoa, he said. How'd you get your eyes to do that? What are you talking about? I snapped, still pulling mightily on the collar. What the hell was this thing made of? I thought it was plastic, but it felt as tough as steel. Your eyes, they're all red and greeny purple, like in the show. Will you shut up about your damn cartoon show? I yelled. I felt my temper go up in a ball of flame like a frozen turkey dropped in a deep fryer. I was grappling double-handed with the gorget, doing a frenzied dance, trying to pry the thing and the medallion on it off my neck. My little performance was gathering an audience. A girl came running up and took Nick by the arm. Nick, what is it? She said. Oh, well, dang, the mythical missing girlfriend. Even in my aggravation, I noted she was darn cute. She was wearing a rainbow colored wig with a matching horsetail, blue feathered angel wings, and a blue leotard decorated with yellow lightning bolts. Son of a gun, a brony chick. The myths were true. I don't know. I told him he was wearing an Alcorn amulet and he started doing this, Nick answered. Ted, what's wrong? More kids gathered. I started cussing and swearing for all I was worth. When I ran out of curses, I started stringing words together at random. I think I spoke Klingon at one point. The kids standing around gawping at my display backed off a step. I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice the sickly purple greenish illumination, like some sort of weird inverted blacklight shining on them. I certainly didn't notice that the weird light was coming from me. Oh my god, it's real! The cute brony girl suddenly shrieked. It's the real Alicorn amulet, just like in the show! What? Look at his eyes! Something in me, I don't know, something came uncorked. My guts just flooded with rage. Freak your stupid pony crap, I snarled, wheeling on them. Everyone took a serious step back. Whoa, that voice changer was effective. Frag your stupid ponies! If I could burn that stupid airy-fairy ponyland to the ground and pee on the ashes just to see the looks on your stupid faces! Yeah, it was a complete overreaction. Great, good. Hell, I was a junior in high school, and here I was doing the I'm on drugs, get the spiders off Watusi with a couple of My Little Pony fans in front of the entire school. I had another year and a half of high school to look forward to, and my rep was undergoing a ritual killing right in front of me. So, not a happy place. There was a loud roaring sound. There was a loud roaring sound. Wind sprang up around us, stirring up a torrent of leaves and dirt, and whipping cloaks and other loose bits of costume around in the air. It was like someone had opened a wind tunnel. Weird light the color of a festering bruise bathed everyone. We all looked up. Several people screamed. A black light colored funnel cloud a dozen yards across it formed directly overhead. I could see more purple black glowing light glowing in the depths of its throat, directly over my head. Before I could do more than scream, thank God my voice changer made it sound like a much more manly roar. I was plucked off my feet by the roaring wind and hurtled into the sky. The last thing I saw before I disappeared into the dark whirling void was Nick and his brony girlfriend staring up at me, their mouths hanging open. Then the funnel closed and I was hurtling through blackness. Well, not blackness. It looked more like the sort of darkness you get on a black light poster. Black boiling clouds interspersed with a lot of luminescent tinged linings of indigo, purple lightning veins, flecks of bilious glowing green. Afterward, I reflected, seeing there was an artist with a very limited palette involved in the whole mess. At the time, though, I was too busy grimacing and screaming to appreciate the continuity. I hurtled or fell or flew for, I don't know, a brief bit of forever. All around me, the darkness, it raged. I could feel it. It was like the universe itself had a hole torn through it, and I was plunging through. And then the purpling void opened up in front of me, and I fell. I had just enough time to appreciate the still, starry night around me before I noticed the ground rising up to meet me at speed. I started to scream again. I think I managed to get out. Aye! Before I slammed face down, full length into the very, very hard ground. Pain. 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 Painy, pain, pain. Every part of me hurt simultaneously. At least all my spiky pads had protected me, though I was kind of regretting not going for the armored codpiece. I rolled over on my back, groaning, and pulled off my helmet so I could clutch at my head unimpeded. I looked up just in time to see my skull-topped staff plummeting out of the sky, skull first, straight towards my unprotected face. Oh, shit! Then forehead met forehead, and the world went sincerely dark. And that was Storytime, The Rise of Darth Vulcan, Chapter 2. Why is your questing kept getting deleted? MDBGJC. Are you typing a URL? That's probably why. I think there's some sort of blocking thing to keep people from posting URLs on the thing. Ask a question, ask it straight, type it out. Ugh. A bit of a burpy tummy ache. Since we're going, would you all like to do another one? I think my next chapter, I've updated the El Arira. El Arira. It's updated on sufficient velocity and space battles if you want to check it out. Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm thinking, okay, I could read another one.
That was delicious. I could go for another.
Okay, let's throw in another one. How about, let's see here. Did I already read the Thunder Rolls? I'm pretty sure I did. That's probably going to be the next fan fiction I add a chapter to. Finally got some ideas bubbling for it. Before he and Zelda became a couple. Okay, you're asking about before he and Zelda became a couple. What are you asking about? I'm assuming Nip and Zelda. Or Tuck and... I'm sorry. Nip and Zelda. Type... I'm only seeing the second half of your question, MDBJC. Type the rest of it. I could happily read any of them at this point, at this moment. El Arira, okay. I misspelled Arira, actually. I spelled it like this. Can't get it to center for some reason. Okay, here we go. El Araira, chapters 1 through 3. They're short. Go on, young man, the old woman said with a smile. She tipped up the jewelry case so Izuku could see the contents better. Pick one out. My gift to you. Izuku hesitated. Ma'am, that's very kind of you, but... The tiny wrinkled woman smiled at him. After what you did, it's only right that I should thank you. Go on. I insist. It had been an eventful half hour. Izuku had been on his way to school, enjoying the warm weather when he stumbled across a crime in the happening. A street punk, a leather-jacketed tough with an enormous drill for a pompadour, was shaking down a craft vendor's cart for money. All your cash, old lady, he'd snarled. Snap it up! He revved the drill on his head, making it scream menacingly. The owner of the cart, a tiny old woman with her graying hair in a bun, had been terrified. Please, it's only morning. I haven't sold anything yet. She'd held up the money box she'd been using in lieu of a register. Snarling, the thug snatched the steel box from her hands and run for it, his drill whirling. Out of the way! Izuku hadn't even had to think about it. As the thief ran past, he'd whipped out one foot and snagged the runner's ankle. Drillhead had completely lost all balance and gone sailing headfirst into a lamppost. There'd been a sound like an electric pencil sharpener choking on a crayon, and the would-be bandit was left kneeling on the sidewalk, stuck to the pole by the drill on his forehead. A nearby pedestrian had seen the whole thing and, after he and everyone else had finally quit laughing, called the police. They'd arrived, taken everyone's testimony, given the cart lady her money box back, congratulated Izuku on his quick thinking, and were now in the process of extracting the street tough from the lamppost. Izuku had watched for a few minutes, snickering to himself, till the cart lady had gotten his attention. That was brave of you, my boy, she said, beaming at him. You've got the makings of a hero in you. Izuku stammered and flushed. Thank you for saying so, he said, rubbing his arm. It's not likely I'll be one, though. She cocked her head like a bird. I don't have a quirk, he muttered, flushing harder as he admitted his most embarrassing flaw. To his surprise, the woman scoffed. As if a quirk had anything to do with being a hero. She gestured to the thug, who was being escorted to a squad car. He was cuffed and had what looked like a huge foam cork stuck over the drill on his head. That one had a quirk. Did that make him a hero? Izuku snickered again. To be fair, it kind of looked like he got the bottom of the barrel for quirks, he said. The old woman laughed merrily. True enough, true enough. A drill on his head? Not exactly All Might, was he? She tittered a bit more as the squad car drove off. Still, it's the heart and the deeds that make a hero, not the tools or the talents. She regarded him, eyes glittering. Here, let me say thank you. She picked up one of the glass top boxes on her cart and opened the lid. Inside were some of the bits of homemade jewelry she was hawking. One of my totem pendants, she said, for free. Embarrassed, Izuku refused, but she insisted. Think of it as a promotional, then, she pressed. Go on, pick one out. It's a gift from me to you. Izuku hesitated. He didn't want to offend her by turning down the gift. He wasn't a jewelry sort of guy. But maybe his mother would like it. He looked in the box. The old lady had all sorts of handmade jewelry, necklaces, rings, bracelets. This box was full of pendants crafted out of silver, no bigger than his thumb, and dangling from leather thongs. Each one had a different stylized animal engraved on it. He saw a bat, a spider, a fierce-looking badger-like creature, a turtle. There was one, though, that seemed to stand out for some reason, perhaps a bit shinier than the others. It had a rabbit or hare caught in mid-leap. Perfect. Even if he didn't wear it, Kachan would mock him mercilessly. His mother would like it. He reached out and picked it up with a thumb and forefinger. This one is lovely, he said as he hefted it in his palm. It, ouch! He nearly dropped it, barely catching it by the thong with his other hand as something stung his palm. Oh, did you hurt yourself, dear? The lady asked. Did I not polish that one right? A sharp corner? No, 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 I'm fine, Izuku said. He shook his hand and looked at his palm. There was no cut. A pinched nerve, maybe? He did have some odd pins and needles sensations in his palm. He looked at the pendant. No, there was no sharp edge or point on it anywhere. It was polished as smooth as the others, though it did seem to have lost some of its luster now that it was out of the velvet-lined box. Ah, the rabbit, the cart lady said. Interesting choice. Very interesting. Her eyes twinkled oddly. Izuku stared at her with a raised eyebrow as she put the box away. Somewhere a bell tolled. She looked up sharply. Oh dear, I've kept you. You'd best hurry, my boy. You don't want to be late for school. Izuku started and picked up his backpack. Oh, and thank you for the gift, he said, bowing politely. The old lady reached up and patted his cheek. It was my pleasure, Midoriya-san, she said. She made shooing motions. Go on. Go, go, go. Izuku laughed and ran off. She watched until he turned a corner and disappeared from sight. He would be blocks away before he'd wonder when he had told her his name. Oh yes, an interesting choice indeed, O Prince of 1,000 Enemies. A moment later there was no sign the little old lady or her cart had ever been there. By all rights, Izuku should have been late. But from the moment he'd left the cart lady behind him, he'd been moving. The streets and buildings seemed to fly past. He'd taken up running a little after school to try and get in more heroic shape, but he'd had no idea he was improving so much. He should have arrived at least 10 minutes late. Instead, he'd arrived with a minute to spare, barely even breathing hard either. It was a good start to the day. The good vibe hadn't lasted, of course. No, it was a typical enough day. The classes were tedious, the clock was slow, the schoolwork demanding. His classmates were standoffish and disdainful to the quirkless kid, and Kachan was a jerk. But things were off. For some reason, as the day went on, Izuku found himself feeling more and more restless, jittery even. His leg was constantly twitching, his toe tapping. The sounds of the school seemed a little noisier, the lights a little brighter, the writing and pictures in the book a little sharper. It was making it hard to pay attention to anything. On top of that, he kept getting that sensation. He could only think of it as the feeling one got when someone was watching you, or when someone was about to poke you or punch you or throw something at your head. You couldn't see them, but you could just hear it coming in the bottom of your hearing or feel it on your skin. Only it was going on all day. It seemed to be coming from everywhere. He'd in fact had a few close shaves, twisting out of the way of an elbow meant for his ribs, skipping over a foot that would have tripped him. That only made him more on edge. And that weird pins and needles sensation had spread up from his hand all the way up his arm. Then came the pinnacle of the day, their homeroom teacher on the final hour of the day, asking them what their plans were for their career. Every kid there, naturally, had all but shouted their ambition to be a pro hero. Even the dork with the neck-stretching power and the kid with a pencil for a head. Kachan had mocked them all, told them he was the only one who'd applied to UA who even had a hope of getting in. Then their teacher, the traitorous so-and-so, had informed everyone that Midoriya had applied to UA as well. The class had exploded into laughter. All except at Kachan, of course. The hot-tempered blonde promptly took it as an insult. To him, that Izuku had dared apply to his future hero school. What? He roared. He burst up out of his chair and stomped to the back of the room where Izuku was sitting. Deku, you worthless! Danger! Spack! Whoomp! The classroom fell silent in shock as Katsugi Bakugo slumped to the floor unconscious. Izuku stood there, half risen out of his chair, and stared at his raised fist. The moment Kachan had stepped within arm's reach, Izuku's fist had shot up in a blur, striking the explosive bully right on the point of the chin and knocking him out. The rest of the class stared in awe. Midoriya had cold-clocked Bakugo. No way, someone breathed. Midoriya, the teacher yelped, half in shock, half in outrage. What? I don't know, Izuku babbled, his eyes wide and teary. He just lunged at me and my arm moved. Someone go fetch the school nurse, the teacher commanded. Get Mr. Bakugo off the floor, you two. The student singled out hastened to obey. Midoriya, I don't know what's gotten into you. Izuku wasn't listening. It wasn't like he was inclined to listen to the old hypocrite anyway. How many times had Kachan punched or kicked him or blown his stuff up? But he was blocking the teacher out, the old fart barely registering on his senses anyway. His eyes darted around the classroom. He could feel all their eyes on him. Some were stunned, but some of Kachan's friends were angry with him. He could smell it in the air, feel it in their eyes boring into his skin, the promise of blows yet to come. The bell for the end of the day rang. Izuku grabbed his bag and bolted. He ignored the teacher's shouts for him to come back and didn't slow down till he was on the street. Izuku blindly followed the route home, letting memory guide his feet. He thought he would be able to calm down if he got away from the classroom, away from that aura of threat hanging in the air. But out here it was worse. The streets were noisy, deafening almost. The city air smelled bitter and sharp. He could feel that eyes on his skin sensation from dozens of places, waxing and waning. And the pins and needles that started to spread across his back. Was that a warning sign? Was he sick? Poisoned? Something rushing towards him. Danger, danger, danger. Izuku made a hysterical leap backwards. Without noticing it, he'd stepped off the curb at the corner. A split second later, an electric car whizzed past, barely missing his toes by inches. How had he known it was coming? The pins and needles suddenly rushed over his whole body, growing and growing. It felt like he'd been caught out in a sleet of steel needles. His arms clamped around his middle as cramps tore through his guts, his sides, his arms, his legs. With a half-groan, half-scream of pain and panic, he fell to the sidewalk, curled in a ball. A whining din filled his ears. Over the deafening sound, he could faintly hear people's voices. People were gathering around him where he lay. Help me, he gasped, and mercifully he blacked out. In the news today, it appears the trade talks with the United States, England, and Canada will be moving in a more positive direction now that the Diet has passed the Quirk Laws Reformation Act, removing one of the major hurdles towards open trade with nations who objected to the older standing laws on human rights grounds. With the passing of these reformations, many of the laws governing quirk use, such as the ones forbidding public use, have been diminished or revoked entirely, easing the burden on law enforcement. Izuku slowly woke to the droning voice of the newscaster. He wasn't on the pavement anymore. He was lying in a bed, thin blankets up to his chest. He sniffed. He could smell cleaners and astringents, that old, familiar hospital smell. Blech. His mouth tasted like paste. He twitched his ears towards the sounds of the TV. He replayed that thought again. What did I just do? Blearily, he rubbed his eyes with the heels of his palms and looked around. Well, yes, he was in a hospital bed. He sat up and looked down at himself. Thick white fur covered his arms. His scream brought people running. Inca Midoriya had been up all night. She'd sat by her baby's bedside till the sun had come up and it set again, and refused to move. The hospital staff had wisely decided to accede to her wish to stay. She had only stepped away once every few hours to freshen up and to fetch something to eat from the hospital cafeteria. She'd just gone to get another cup of the hospital's lamentable coffee when she heard Izuku scream. The nurse and the on-call doctor barely beat her to the door. They found him standing in the middle of the room, next to the toppled hospital bed. He was hunched over, staring at the hands in front of his face, and shaking in terror. The moment everyone piled in, he whipped around and stared at them with wide eyes. "Stay back!" he shrilled. He looked ready to do incredible violence to anyone who didn't. The doctor and the nurse and the orderlies froze. Inko didn't. She shoved past them and headed straight for her baby boy. "Izuku!" He shied back. "Mom, don't come near me. Don't. I don't know what." What he didn't know got smothered as his mother wrapped him in her arms. "It's okay, baby, it's okay," she crooned. "Thank heaven you're awake." As she rocked him back and forth, the tension slowly ebbed out of him. The medical staff relaxed as he calmed down. "Mom," he croaked, tears rolling out of his eyes. "What happened to me?" Inko pulled him back to look him in the eye and wiped her eyes with her palm. Her face was wet with tears too, but she was smiling. "Izuku, it looks like your quirk came in," she said. She laughed wetly. "But it wasn't quite what any of us were expecting." She turned him around to face the window. It was dark outside, so he could see the reflection of the room's interior on the glass. His mother was there, and standing next to her in the reflection was a 5-foot-tall anthropomorphic rabbit. They calmed him down, gave him something to eat and drink, and persuaded him to at least sit on the bed for safety's sake. After the initial panic and confusion had quieted down, they had persuaded both of them to let him stay overnight for observation. Exhausted by the ordeal, they both agreed. Despite everything, Izuku had slept like the dead. The next morning, they moved on to something Izuku never expected to deal with: quirk analysis. They wheeled him down to the quirk analysis offices on the 4th floor, giving him a loose sweatshirt and sweatpants to wear that his mother had brought with her, and let him step into the lavatory to get dressed. He took the opportunity to look himself over. The first thing he noticed when he stripped off the hospital gown was that he was toned. He'd gone from a teenage stick figure to a swimmer's build overnight. "Holy cow," he murmured, flexing a bit in the mirror. He was covered head to toe in sheer white fur, save only for the top of his head where his unmistakable mop of green curls still grew. His legs were long and powerful, and his feet had elongated out into rabbit-like paws, with 4 pink-padded toes and thick claws instead of nails. While he could rest his long feet flat on the floor, he'd stood up for a bit to try walking about. He was more comfortable standing on his toes and the ball of his foot. His hands were more like paws as well. The fingers were thick and stubby, with fat tips and pads on his fingertips and palms. And again, thick, sharp claws had replaced the nails. His face was still recognizable. His large, emotional green eyes were the same, at any rate. But his nose and chin had pushed out into a short muzzle. His nose was now a pink triangle that twitched as he breathed. Thin, almost invisible whiskers sprouted from his cheeks where his freckles once were. His upper lip was cleft, and he had 2 noticeable buck teeth just under his upper lip. His ears were stretched out into enormous lapine ones, as long as his own forearm, and his whole face, of course, was covered in soft, downy white fur. Yes, he did have a little cotton tail. Good grief. He shook his head till his ears flopped and finished pulling on the sweat clothes. "Admire yourself later," he muttered to himself. "Find out what happened to you first." He stepped out into the examination room. His mother was there, as well as a doctor he hadn't seen, the quirk specialist, he guessed. Well, young man, the specialist said, it's not often I get to evaluate a new quirk on someone your age. In fact, I dare say it's something of a first. Step over here and let's see what's what. He pulled out a stethoscope and, what do you call those gadgets for looking in someone's ear? Hop up on this table. The examination had gone on for some time. It had been exhaustive. Izuku had been put through all sorts of scanners, then subjected to treadmills, grip testers, dozens of other kinds of measuring devices, and exercise equipment. The less said about the samples the doctor had taken, the better. It was mid-afternoon, and Izuku had just about reached the limits of his patience when the inspection stopped and the doctor finally started making an analysis. Enhanced hearing, sense of smell, also enhanced eyesight, as well as tapetum lucidum, eye shine. Not something normally seen in actual rabbits, oddly enough, though it does occur from time to time in even baseline human beings, the doctor went on. He'll have excellent farsight as well as keen night vision. His reflexes are off the chart. His aerobic oxygen consumption is better than an old-era Olympic marathon runner. His physical strength is... Doctor, Izuku's mother said patiently, is there anything medical we need to know about his changes? Food allergies, medical needs, that sort of thing? Oh, well, of course. That's a concern for patients with most mutation quirks, yes. He looked at something on his tablet. Let's see here. Toxicology report, gastric, etc. Well, he's healthy as a horse, so no worries about that. His digestive tract is still baseline, so an ordinary diet should be perfectly fine for him, though you may want to add more protein and more leafy greens to it. He won't have to deal with a rabbit's gastric tract, thankfully. He gave Izuku a look, for which he should be very thankful. Izuku looked at him askance. Why? Let's just say you don't want to know what rabbits have to do to completely digest their food and leave it at that, the doctor said. Also, get something to chew on. You'll have an urge to. Your teeth will tend to grow continually, and chewing will help keep them down. Some sticks of apple wood or maple will do. Don't swallow the splinters, though. Add lots of hard things like crunchy fruits and nuts to your diet, too. Izuku nodded, but his mind was on other things. Doctor, what kind of quirk do I have exactly? He swallowed. I'm pretty sure it's not a transformative quirk. I've been trying to change back all day, but it's not worked yet. The doctor sighed and nodded. Unsurprising. There are other biological indicators that it's not a transformative quirk. Your appearance, at least, is due to a mutation quirk, albeit an extremely abnormally late appearing one. This form is your form. Izuku took a deep breath, then let it out. He could see his mother biting her lip in worry. I'll be okay, he said. I'll just have to adjust, right? I adjusted to being quirkless. I can adjust to all this. He waved his hands at himself. Oh, another thing, the doctor said. This isn't precisely your only quirk. Izuku's ears swiveled forward. Not my only quirk? He looked at the doctor as if he'd grown a second head. Oh, allow me to explain, the doctor. The doctor said that he trundled over to a chart hanging on the wall depicting the 3 types of quirks. Now, it's commonly taught that there are 3 types of quirk. Emittive, where you emit some type of force, energy, or matter. Transformative, where you can change your own physiognomy. And mutation, where your body is permanently altered from the norm. We all get one quirk, which we inherit from one parent or the other, or is made from the merging of their quirks into a new form. Right? The Midoriyas nodded. Bunk, the doctor said flatly. It's a crappy, flawed classification system that has so many exceptions to the rule you wonder how the heck they came up with the rules in the first place. You've seen countless people with mutations, people with bird heads or cat ears or what have you, but who also can shoot fireballs from their armpits or talk to squirrels or make rain clouds appear. So what the hell do you call that? There's also the fact that inherited quirks change from generation to generation, growing stronger and more complex, or that the people who inherit a combination of two quirks more potent than the parents, or that is totally different from either. The idea that two distinct genetic traits could mishmash into a single new one is a notion fit to make any competent geneticist tear his hair out. Well, you see all these things happening all the time with quirks. People with multiple powers, people with mutation and transformative or emissive, people with more powerful than both their parents combined tenfold. That's the proof of the quirk's singularity, isn't it? Izuku said. He twitched. The idea that someday quirks would be too powerful, so powerful that nobody who had them would be able to control them, was disturbing. The doctor snorted. That's also bunk, he said. It's made up by ignorant, gormless morons who don't know how to draw a bell curve. He held up his digital tablet and pulled out a stylus. Look, after the radiant baby was born, both the percentage of people born with quirks and the power of the average quirk accelerated rapidly. He drew an upward swooping line in red on the chart on his tablet screen. Now, which is exactly what you expect. It's like lighting a campfire. Once you get it going, at first it accelerates rapidly. However, since about 30 years ago, both those numbers have been decelerating. He continued the line, tapering it off till it was almost level. For instance, Endeavor is incredibly powerful, scary powerful. He's a big leap ahead of other fire quirks that preceded him, and his son is more powerful than him, but by not nearly much as a margin. Powers are leveling out. And the percentage of quirk holders to non-holders is stabilizing as well. We went from less than 1% to nearly 70% in the first 50 years. But it's taken the last 50 years to reach 80%. Barring deliberate scientific intervention, we'll always have a certain minority of quirkless in society, maybe 1 or 2%, but it'll take another 50 years to reach it. Plus, while emissive and transformative quirks are becoming more powerful, mutation quirks, the kind that make the body faster, stronger, and tougher, are becoming more powerful and more prevalent. And we're seeing more people with seeming mutation quirks like yourself who also have a quirk in another category. Now, it seems to me that implies our powers are changing to become stronger, but our bodies are also changing to become tough enough to handle it. So sorry, the quirk-pocalypse has been postponed for the foreseeable future, he said dryly. He stuck the stylus in his lab coat pocket and stuck the tablet under his arm. But back to your issues. Now, as I was saying, you essentially have a second quirk, or a sub-quirk, if you like. An emissive one, technically. Remember the test with the tennis balls? Yes, I remember the test with the tennis balls, Izuku said ruefully. They'd had him walk into a room and promptly set a couple of tennis ball serving machines on him. He'd barely managed to dodge the volleys of hurling, fuzzy green projectiles, and just a few seconds of fire left him fuming. Now, don't you think it odd for anyone to be able to dodge over 100 tennis balls at high velocity? The doctor smiled. Izuku jerked in surprise. Young man, I've noticed that since you walked in, you've been, well, not twitchy, but tense, alert. Constantly looking about, those ears of yours on more of a swivel than your head. Care to explain why? I'm sorry, Izuku said, rubbing his arm to smooth out the fur. I'm kind of jumpy. I'm kind of picked on at school, and so I've sort of gotten hyper attentive. But even here, in a hospital examination room? Izuku, take a seat, would you? Relax a moment. Izuku sat on a nearby stool. The doctor sat on his own wheeled stool and leaned towards him, looking at him closely. Okay, rest. Okay, rest now, and focus on how you feel. Tell me, How do you feel right now? Like I'm being watched, Izuku grumbled, his ears folded back. I've felt like that all day. It keeps coming and going. Good, good. Now focus on that feeling, the doctor said. I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. Izuku frowned, but obeyed. He heard the doctor walking around till he was standing behind him. Good. Now let it out. Good. Now, Izuku, imagine you're in a forest. A forest at night. Focus on it. Picture it as clearly as you can. And describe it to me. Izuku's brow furrowed. It's twilight. It's all shadows. There's a little moonlight. I can't see much, but I can hear things. Frogs and crickets and night birds. But he shivered a bit. I can hear things moving around in the brush. Snakes in the grass. Animals hunting in the undergrowth. Dangerous ones? They could be, he said. To his own surprise, he was a little fearful. Point to one. Don't open your eyes, just point to one. Izuku raised a hand and pointed. Now point to another. His hand drifted up to the left. And another? Izuku's hand swiveled to point off further to the right. His imagination filled in the sound. It was much larger and was growling this time. And now, ah! Izuku's eyes snapped open. He spun about and whipped his hand up. The tennis ball thwacked into the palm of his hand and issued from his face. It took him a moment to realize what had happened. While Izuku had been talking, the doctor had tiptoed over to the equipment cabinet, picked up a tennis ball, and flung it at Izuku's head full force. Izuku dropped the ball. It rolled across the floor to the doctor's feet. The doctor picked it up and bobbled it in one hand. That is your other quirk, the doctor said. You have a danger sense. You're subconsciously aware of anything around you based on how potentially or immediately dangerous it is. You figured that out just from throwing a tennis ball? Inko piped up in disbelief. The doctor nodded. Tell me, Izuku, what did it feel like when I whipped this ball at your head? Izuku thought it over, fishing for the words. Did you ever see a jump scare video? Like how you can know it's coming, you can tell, and then boom, whatever it is jumps out at you and gets you anyway? Even if you've seen it a dozen times already? Kind of like that. The doctor nodded. You sensed imminent danger when I was preparing to throw the ball, then went to jump scare when I actually threw it. He looked around the room. Allow me to add that earlier, when you pointed towards the dangerous sounds in our little exercise, you first pointed to a biohazard disposal box on the wall we use for dirty needles. Then a bottle of toxin we keep in the upper cabinet. Then through my office door at my desk where I keep a loaded gun in a locked drawer. The Midoriya's eyes widened at this tidbit. Your danger sense is very comprehensive. It picks up both immediate threats and also more abstract dangers. And scares the crap out of me with them? Izuku said, distressed. Is that it for me? A quirk that lets me get scared all the time and run away? Inko got to her feet and went to comfort him. Is that how I'm supposed to live? Izuku said. Always afraid, always feeling like I'm being surrounded by 1,000 enemies? What kind of use as a hero is that, like that? Izuku, the doctor said. What? Ah! Whap! Once again, Izuku snagged the ball out of the air without even looking. This time, inches from his and his mother's head. Doctor! Inko yelped. Dunno, seems kind of useful to me, the doctor said coolly. Izuku gripped the ball. That could have hit my mother, you know, he said angrily. The doctor looked him over. No, I don't think it would have, he said. unruffled by the rabbit boy's glare. You'd never let it. He smiled oddly. Surrounded by 1,000 enemies, eh? All. He started to quote. All the world shall be your enemy, O prince of 1,000 enemies, and if they catch you, they will kill you. But first, they must catch you. He got to his feet and took back the bowl. As I tell all my quirk patients, it isn't what you have, it's what you do with it. Some people would be useless clods even with All Might's power. Some great pro heroes have quirks you can barely notice. You've got an odd power set, one that most people would disregard at first glance, but if a brave, honorable, and most of all smart kid like you can't make something out of this, I'd eat my medical degree. Izuku leaned back into his mother's arms. The doctor's remark about being a smart kid goaded him. For the first time, he started applying his clever, deductive, quirk-analyzing skills to himself. Hearing, scent, eyesight, reflexes, a danger sense. It's not the individual powers, it's the synergy, he realized. Like when two heroes with complementary quirks work together. And all my abilities are complementary. The doctor was tossing the tennis ball up and down in one hand. Izuku's paw whipped out and snapped it out of the air in mid-toss. Yeah, he said. A smile started to grow on his face. I think you're right. Maybe I can make something of this. It was early evening in Golden Week. Something swift and white raced across the rooftops of Musafatu. If you were in the street and listened, you might hear racing footsteps. If you happened to glance up at the right time, you might see a white blur flash from rooftop to rooftop in a single leap. But, as Izuku had learned, few people looked up. After Izuku's metamorphosis, Izuku's mother had made the decision to pull him out of school for what is left of the school year. He was homeschooling, taking his classes and exams at home by computer instead, and spending the rest of his time adapting to his new body and his new quirk. Or, in Izuku's parlance, training. Thanks to the Quirk Law Reformation, or as some wise apples were calling it, the great government cranial rectal extraction, laws about the public use of quirks had been relaxed. Izuku could go out and push his new abilities to the limit without fear of getting arrested for quirk use in public anymore. As could anyone else. In fact, down in the streets below, Izuku could see people celebrating their newfound freedom, using their quirks to put on firework or other aerial displays ostensibly for the holiday, performing stunts with their powers or just using them openly without apprehension. Here, a fellow using his pyrokinesis to light his pipe. There, a lady levitating her holiday purchases along behind her. Izuku, for his part, was running the rooftops, stretching his legs. It hadn't taken him long to discover that he was fast on foot. He wasn't sure how fast, but he could easily outrace the cars in the street. He'd soon taken to doing his running overhead to avoid the traffic below, pedestrian or otherwise. The uneven terrain provided an extra challenge he thoroughly enjoyed. And it didn't even really slow him down. With his powerful legs and enhanced agility and reflexes, he'd taken to parkour with breathtaking ease. Oh, he was no parkour beast, not yet, but his sheer quirk-enhanced natural talent let him leap, flip, and vault over, under, and through obstacles without missing a stride. Run up vertical walls, leap across alleys and city streets, hundreds of feet up as readily as other people walked across them down below. He stopped to catch his breath on a pagoda-themed roof and rubbed a cool towelette over his face and arms and ears. He didn't exactly sweat the way a baseline human did anymore. The exercise had treated him well. In the course of a couple of months, he had gone from toned to ripped. He had solid pecs and washboard abs. His arms and legs were corded with muscle you could see even through his white fur. He would never be a muscled Hulk, but he was still solidly built and whipcord lean. The doctor had been right. He'd adapted to his danger sense. The mental image the quirk doctor had given him of visualizing himself alone in a forest at night had let him adjust quickly. He became the rabbit in the forest. The endless litany of cries of danger became rustles in the grass, movement in the leaves overhead, the sound of paws on forest floor, and the faint growls of predators in the night. He was surrounded but hidden, alert but unafraid. He could track them all. He could see and hear and smell the dangerous thing long before it could sense him. They passed him in the night, and he remained. Still, he had the unfortunate habit of striking out in reflex at anything that burst onto his danger sense too suddenly. Or if it didn't set off his danger sense and just popped out of nowhere. Hey there! Ah! Which could have been extremely unfortunate for the young man who popped out of nowhere behind him. Izuku lashed out with 3 lightning-fast punches and then leapt backward, nearly going off the edge of the roof. It took him half a second to realize that not one of his punches had landed. The target in question was crouched in a defensive stance, holding his hands up. Whoa, whoa, whoa! I come in peace! Holy cow, stranger, you've got reflexes like a cobra! He was a young man about Izuku's age, with blond hair and narrow dark eyes. He was dressed in a karate gi, a black belt, Izuku noted, and had a tufted tail that was as thick as his leg and as long as he was tall. It twitched behind him in agitation. Where did you come from? Izuku snapped, his heart still racing a bit. The blond kid pointed behind himself at an open trapdoor and then pointed down. You're standing on top of my grandfather's dojo, he said, giving Izuku a half smile. Izuku relaxed a bit, embarrassed. Sorry, I didn't mean to trespass. The blond kid waved his hand in dismissal. No, it's okay. Just doing a little rooftop running, huh? Izuku nodded. Yeah, I know. Awesome neighborhood for it. I was kind of planning on doing a little myself later. He stood up and leaned back, balancing on his tail. So what's your name? Midori Izuku, Izuku said. And yours? Ojiro Mashiro, the blonde said. Welcome to Ojiro-Do Martial Arts Studio. He nodded. So what brings you through the neighborhood tonight? Izuku rubbed the back of his head. Just trying to get a little training in, he said. I'm looking to apply to UA. The admission exams were 9 months away at this point, a cloud looming on the horizon. Oh, you too? Ojiro sounded approving. Aiming for that myself. Gotta say, with reflexes like that, you've got a pretty good shot. Thanks, Izuku said. Nothing like you, though. I mean, I've never seen anyone dodge like that. I've never seen anyone throw 3 punches in a half second, Ojiro said. Gotta say, though, your form was really sloppy. Izuku winced, his ears drooping. Haven't gotten a load of professional training, he mumbled. Ojiro cocked his head to one side. You looking to change that? He said. We always have an opening in our classes. You've got a lot of raw ability. I bet we could whip you into passable shape in 9 months. Izuku straightened, his ears perked up. Ojiro had to suppress a snicker. That'd be great, he hesitated, one ear going back, but I'm not sure I could afford the fee. For a fellow UA hopeful, Ojiro said, I think we can work something out. If you don't mind sweeping a few floors or helping me look after the brats when we have the junior classes, we could swing you an employee discount. Besides, I could always use a sparring partner. For real? That'd be great, Izuku said, enthused. He held out his hand to seal the deal. Call me Izuku. Ojiro grinned. Call me Mashiro. He gripped Izuku's hand and shook it. And that was how Izuku made his first friend and got his start at the dojo. 9 months later, Izuku stood in the front door of his and his mother's apartment. His suit was clean and pressed, his mop of green curls was combed as best as possible, And his backpack had his hero notebooks, his tracksuit, and a few bits of gear gifted him by the Ojiro Dojo patriarch. His feet were bare, but when you're a rabbit man, good fitting shoes are more of a hypothetical. His mother fussed over him, straightening his tie one last time. "Oh, Izuku, I'm so proud of you," she said. "You've come so far. If only your father were here to see this." Her eyes got weepy. "My special little guy." "Mom," Izuku said, blushing. "Oh, never mind me. You just go out there and knock their socks off, okay?" She smiled up at him tearfully. "Good luck, sweetie." She grabbed him in a firm hug. "I love you too, Mom." He hugged her back. They stood there for several seconds. "Mom, I gotta go." Inko held on and rubbed her cheek into his. Soft and fluffy. "Mom!" Inko laughed and let him go. "I had to do that just once more." Go on, go on. You don't want to miss your bus." He bounded down to the parking lot, waving goodbye over his shoulder. Inko smiled and waved. She sniffled a bit and then closed the door. Izuku stood up and looked up at the front gates of UA. This was it. Months of training and studying, countless hours sparring with Ojiro, practicing blocks, punches, kicks, and throws, countless more hours sweeping floors, washing windows, wiping little noses and bandaging little knees, and trying to keep exuberant little rugrats from half killing each other. It all came down to this. He was about to apply to UA, the single most prestigious hero school in Japan. He was about to start his journey on becoming a pro hero. He marched up the steps and promptly snagged one of his oversized feet on something. He was about to flatten his nose on the pavement. Crap was all the time he had to think. Just before his cute little pink nose mashed into the concrete, he halted in midair. "Ah!" He flailed a bit, confused as to why the hell he was floating. "Sorry," someone said. "Just didn't want you to hurt yourself." Someone pushed him upright. It was a girl, a rather cute one, with large eyes, pink dots on each cheek, and brown hair in a bob cut. She put her fingers together. "Release!" His feet thumped back down on the pavement. Thank you," he said, mumbling a bit. He watched her and resisted the urge to roll his eyes when the moment came. The moment when her polite smile started to grow and her eyes started to sparkle. The moment that seemed to happen with most small children and with most women no matter what age. The moment it dawned on them. Giant, cute, fluffy, bunny person right in front of me. This tended to be followed, in the case of older girls and women, with attempts to pet his ears, hugs, and, usually in the case of smaller children and bolder females, outright glumpings. It wasn't so bad, he supposed, but it got kind of awkward at times. To his relief, he supposed, she kept her hands to herself, though he did notice she had to clamp them together behind herself and sort of bounced on her toes in glee. "Why, I've never seen a quirk quite like, a giant bunny," Izuku said. He couldn't quite keep the long-suffering amusement out of his voice. She blushed a bit. "I'm sorry, that must get tiresome. I mean..." Izuku shrugged it off. The inside of his ears got a little red. "You get used to it, I suppose." The girl coughed. "Still, No, really, it's..." A familiar voice bellowed in Izuku's hypersensitive ears.
I said, get out of the way, extras!
"Ah!" Spack! Thwump! Once again, Izuku found himself standing, staring at his outstretched fist. Sprawled out on the sidewalk at his feet, his eyes slightly crossed, was a familiar-looking, spiky-haired blonde boy. Izuku looked again. Yes, it was Bakugo. The brunette next to Izuku gasped, hands on her mouth. "Oh my gosh! What? How does he keep sneaking up on me?" Izuku mumbled aloud. Carefully, he reached down and patted Bakugo's cheek with his palm. "It's probably because he goes from zero to explosion in less than a second," he speculated, muttering to himself. "Too fast for my danger sense to pick up." "Should we get help?" the girl said. Bakugo moaned faintly and stirred. No, Izuku said. He pulled a cold pack out of his backpack and dropped it next to Bakugo's head. In fact, we should probably get away, as far away, as soon as possible. He grabbed the girl by the elbow and steered her towards the UA examination building. But we should really help him, she protested. No, in fact, that would be a bad idea, Izuku told her without slowing. In fact, helping him tends to make him angrier. You know him? Izuku looked back. Some luckless soul was bending over to try and help the explosive boy to his feet. Izuku quickly turned the corner. A moment later, several explosions interspersed with swear words split the air. Oh, I'm familiar with him, he said casually, grimacing. The girl looked over her shoulder, her eyes going wide at the plume of smoke rising. Right, she said, grimacing back at him. Time to go. She broke into a trot. Good luck at the exams. Good luck yourself. Izuku double-checked the building number on his admission slip and headed in the other direction. With any luck, he'd be in a different testing room than Kachan. Izuku stood with the mob at the entrance to the practical exam area. He bobbed in place on his digitigrade feet, trying to warm up and stretch his calves a bit. He'd gotten a few odd looks, not to mention a few snickers from other applicants. He had to face it, a 5.5-foot tall rabbit. Even a lean and buff one does not look particularly intimidating. What's he gonna do, chuck Easter eggs at them? He heard some witling say. He ignored them. They weren't allowed much in the way of gear for the practical, so he'd kept it simple. A plain tank top, gym shorts, and a headband to keep his mane of green hair out of his eyes. A first aid kit and a mini backpack on his back. Elbow and knee pads. Ojiro's grandfather had gifted him with a couple of items as well. He'd had a spare pair of specially made sandals strapped to his elongated feet with thick soles that stretched from his foot pad up to his upturned heel. A second pad covered the top of his foot, almost like a shin guard. The two were laced together around his foot with tough leather straps. The finest piece of gear he'd been given, though, were a pair of black fingerless gloves. Again, custom made. They had to be, with his claws and thick stubby fingers. They were based off ancient Greek boxing gloves known as the cestus. They were stout leather, and each one had a thick plate across the knuckles, with 3 large metal studs to further the focus of a blow. Izuku's lightning-fast kicks and punches meant that most of the martial arts training they'd given him had been lifted from savate, French kickboxing. With these knuckle dusters on, he could do some serious damage. Easter eggs, his fluffy white tail. The enormous doors swung open. Everyone paused in surprise. Go! What are you waiting for? President Mike's voice boomed over the intercom. Hero battles don't get a starting bell. Go, go, go! Izuku took a deep breath, dashed forward, leapt over the roaring mob elbowing its way in, and charged for the first 2-pointer. And here we go, Power Loader said. Another round of mindless mass property destruction in the name of higher education. Snipe, who was sitting next to him, chuckled and elbowed him. Bet it's a load of laughs watching them young'uns smashing all those bots you built, ain't it? He said. The staff of UA were gathered in the observation lounge, overseeing the events in the practical, by way of dozens of enormous screens mounted on the wall. As well as judging the students and distributing points, the teachers were engaged in the time-honored tradition of placing wagers with each other and griping about the quality of students this year. I wouldn't mind so much, Power Loader grumped, if a few more of them were a bit more clever about it and didn't just go trying to smash them all like beer cans. An explosion filled one of the screens and he winced. That Bakugo kid is making an extra months of work for me all by himself. Darn it, I built shutdown switches, fail points, and removable power supplies into them for a reason. On another screen, another 3-pointer mysteriously powered down. Footprints from bare feet could be seen trailing away from it. Power Loader pointed. Now, there, that invisible girl used her brains and hit the power down switch. Did you see that? Well, technically no, Midnight quipped. She reached for more popcorn. We do get what you're saying, though, darling. So few of the applicants show any cunning or cleverness about it. Most just go for the Hulk smash routine. She watched as one of the applicants tried to punch out a one-pointer and staggered back, howling in pain and clutching his broken fist. Even when they're not suited for it, she noted, wincing. And this surprises you? A grumpy, sleepy voice noted. Eraserhead had apparently woken back up and was putting his 2 cents back in. The whole test is biased toward brute force, and Quirk's suited for it. Always has been to some degree, and biased against powers like yours, Midnight cooed. Or mine, for that matter. There is a path onto the hero course for those like us, you know, Eraser dear. We both got on it ourselves. It was true. They'd even been classmates. A power that lets you spray soporific dust from your skin, or temporarily turned off other people's quirks, wasn't much use against robots. They'd both had to go through general studies and then climb the ladder to the hero course. It's still illogical, Eraserhead grumbled, settling down into his sleeping bag and ready to doze off again. The rabbit child is doing fairly well, Cementos rumbled. On a screen in the corner they saw a white rabbit with a thatch of curly green hair on his head take out a three-pointer with a savage kick. Holy, he kicked its head right off. I think that is actually the most damage I've seen him do, Principal Nedzu said. The bear dog rat sipped on his tea. He's been very cunning about things. He takes to the rooftop and uses the high ground to spot a robot or two on their own, drops down, administers a few well-placed blows to disable the robot, then flees. He's racked up a fairly impressive number of villain points with minimal collateral. The boy on screen disabled another two-pointer with a punch to the joint in each of its spindly legs, leaping over and under it to deliver each strike with ruthless precision. Another bro crippled the weaponized scorpion tail. He then dug about until he found the shutdown switch and turned the metal beast off. Uh-oh, it looks like he outsmarted himself, Midnight said. While the rabbit boy had been taking out the two-pointer, a half-dozen more 1- and 2-pointers had closed in. He crouched atop the downed robot on all fours, ears laid back. Oh, poor Bunny. Looks like he's done for, Midnight said. Then the rabbit moved. The bots opened fire. Stun rounds, lasers, and mini-missiles flew. None of them came close to touching the rabbit morph. He was over, under, around, and through them, drawing their fire into each other, sending them careening into one another, smashing photoreceptors and crushing weapon ports with precision jackhammer blows. A pair of one-pointers found itself pounding a two-pointer to pieces. Another two-pointer unloaded its weapons into a one-pointer's mechanical face. Several bots tangled together in each other's limbs and exposed wires, crashing to the ground. In less than a minute, all of the robots were down, spewing smoke and sparks. The rabbit morph applicant had raced away, leaving the machines to burn. Holy crap, Ectoplasm said. Power Loader gawked at the screen, hands out in claws, beseeching. How the hell did he do that? He squawked. Izuku dove through a window in one of the fall buildings, taking cover in the shadows as a three-pointer rumbled past. He dove back out, raced up behind it, and slid underneath between the rumbling treads and hit the shutdown switch. The tank-sized machine rumbled to a halt. Whoever designed these things was tricky, Izuku panted. An off switch on the underbelly? Who thinks like that? He slid back out and got to his feet. He needed to parkour up and get topside again. He couldn't see or hear any more bots on this street. Couldn't feel the warning cry of danger anywhere nearby. The ground rumbled and shook. Izuku's danger sense went berserk. The entire world filled with the psychic scream of panic he associated with his power. He clutched his ears and staggered. What the hell was happening? Clouds of concrete dust exploded into the air not a block over. Rising up out of the clouds, looming taller than the buildings, came a robot. Izuku felt his heart shrink to a dot, unable to beat. The zero pointer. Are they out of their minds? He screamed aloud. Around the corner up ahead came a screaming mob of panicked students. President Mike had told them it wasn't worth it to fight the zero pointer. It seemed like everyone present heartily agreed with that assessment. Everyone was fleeing, and the zero pointer was pursuing, its enormous treads crushing everything. The thundering horde bore down on him. His danger sign spiked towards him from a dozen directions. Izuku kipped up onto a fire escape to get out of the way. From there he could see to the back of the crowd, just barely keeping ahead of the destruction. He saw the brown-haired girl at the back. She stumbled. The zero pointer smashed its fist into one of the buildings. He saw the front wall of the building begin to crumble and topple. The girl was right in its path. There was no need to think. Izuku braced his feet against the wall behind him, crouched, and launched himself like an arrow from a bow. He flew over the heads of the crowd, streaking towards the girl, hurtling straight into the roaring roar of the lion, into the screaming wall of danger. He hit the ground, tumbled, gained his feet. He scooped up the girl and leapt back in the other direction as hard as he could. The falling wall slammed into the ground mere inches behind his toes. He hit the ground running, the girl in his arms in a bridal carry. But the buildings on either side were crumbling, falling, stone falling like rain. He dodged left, right, leapt back a step, then forward, talons striking from the sky, serpents striking from the grass. And then they were clear of the dust and the stone rain, the lumbering zero-pointer falling behind them. Izuku felt his toes dig into grass. They'd reached some sort of municipal park in the middle of the faux city. He stumbled to the grass, him and the girl tumbling and rolling over one another till they came to a halt. They sprawled in the grass for a moment, both panting for air and coughing up rock dust. "Are we safe?" the girl said finally. Izuku struggled to sit up. There were applicants scattered everywhere here. The zero-pointer was over 3 blocks away, but it was still rolling towards them. He could feel the wall of danger approaching, a lion relentlessly stalking its way across the plain towards them. The horn sounded. The zero-pointer stopped and shut down, sagging down like a puppet with its strings cut. Izuku sighed in relief, a sigh that was echoed by the girl. He flopped backwards onto the grass. "Yeah, now we are," he said. "Hey." "What?" She was lying flat on the grass next to him. "You know what?" "No, what?" she murmured. "I really, really, really hope we passed," Izuku said. The girl giggled and laughed. He soon joined in. Izuku stood in front of the door to 1A. He tried to analyze what his danger sense was telling him about what was on the other side. Very, very little, actually. No imminent threats were nearby. There was the low rustling in the grass sense of things that were possibly dangerous in the abstract sense. But it wasn't much more than the feeling he got from, say, an exposed electric wire or an untended pot on a stove. Of course, it was a room full of heroes in training, some with seriously destructive powers, so that was only fair. He shrugged, sighed, and pushed the enormous door open. "Izuku-san! Izuku! Uraraka-san! Ojiro-san!" Izuku's face was instantly wreathed in smiles. "I'm so glad you made it." "You know each other?" Ochako said. "We went to the same dojo," Ojiro said with a grin. "If you're here just to make friends, you're wasting your time," an incredibly weary voice said. They all gulped and turned around. An incredibly tired-looking man in a scarf with a 5 o'clock shadow and bloodshot eyes was standing at the front of the class. Everyone hastily got to their seats. Izuku looked around. There was only one empty seat. It took you 8 seconds to sit down and be quiet, the man said. How irrational of you. He looked around. I am Aizawa Shota, your homeroom teacher. Be on time and be in your seats from now on. He pulled out a clipboard. He yawned and proceeded to take attendance. You're all here, he said. Imagine my joy. He looked over at the empty chair. Our last student was delayed. He had to go to the principal's office to settle some paperwork. He'll be joining us out on the field. He pulled out a stack of bagged athletic uniforms. Take these and get changed. Meet me out on the field in 15 minutes. Aizawa looked over his new batch of students. They were all lined up in their tracksuits, looking suitably intimidated. Let's get this quirk apprehension test underway. Midoriya, you go first. He tossed the softball to the nervous-looking rabbit morph. The boy stepped to the center of the circle and got ready to throw. Aizawa was something of a self-deceiving bigot. He himself had to struggle to get up through the general studies class to earn a place on the hero course when he was a student. Even then, he had ended up as an underground hero, getting far fewer accolades, little if any recognition, and consequently making far less money than many of his contemporaries, who worked far less at heroics and had far more cachet as celebrities. That and his own inability to balance work as a nighttime hero, a daytime teacher, and a decent sleep schedule had made him bitter, especially towards students he saw as undeserving, which generally meant any student with flashy, PR-friendly powers who got into the hero course on the first try. He watched the boy flicking his ears around in a show of nerves. The underground hero felt his irritation rise. Typical, Aizawa thought. Timid, fearful, a bundle of nerves. You merely made it here even with a combat-useful quirk. There are a dozen general studies students who deserve this spot more than you. Let's see how you handle having your quirk pulled out from under you. He activated his own power, nullifying the boy's quirk. Eraserhead had pulled this ploy before. He was prepared for the boy to stumble, or to perform a hilariously weak throw, or even for agitation and outrage as the boy realized his quirk had seemingly disappeared. He wasn't quite prepared for a 100 plus mile per hour speedball direct to the face. The instant Eraserhead used his power, the boy screamed, spun on his heel, and fired the ball straight at him. The ball struck the man square in the forehead, dropping him like a bag of potatoes. He hit the dirt and knew no more. When Aizawa awoke, he was lying on his back in the grass. His students gathered in a circle around him, looking concerned. Recovery Girl was kneeling next to him, applying something to his face. There, she said, standing up. That should tide you over until it heals. Aizawa's hand brushed over his throbbing face. He felt bandages on his nose. What? Recovery Girl looked at him. One broken nose and you're going to have two beautiful shiners, she tisked. I'd use my healing on you, but you're so sleep-deprived that it'd probably put you in a coma. You're just going to have to let it heal the old-fashioned way. She gave him a dry look and muttered the rest so only he could hear it. And I've got a good guess you probably deserve it. Logical ruses my wrinkled backside. She handed him a baggie. Have some gummies. As she toddled off, Aizawa sat up. He saw Midoriya standing there. His fists were clenched and trembling, and his ears were laid flat back. Midoriya, exactly what? Don't ever do that to me, Izuku yelled. Aizawa gave him an authoritative scale and then thought the better of it as his nose throbbed. Just what were you thinking assaulting a teacher? It was a reflex response, Midoriya said. The boy crossed his arms, jamming his fists under his armpits. He kept right on glaring. You shut off my danger sense. Aizawa frowned, but Tokiyami, the boy with the raven head, spoke up. Ah, I understand. He nodded. Aizawa turned his dour attention on him. Care to explain, then? The raven-headed boy nodded. Sensei, imagine you are a small creature in the forest. It is the dead of night. All around you are sounds, things rustling in the grass, animals prowling in the undergrowth, predators on the wing overhead. Now, what is the most frightening sound you can possibly imagine? Aizawa hated cryptic riddles. A wolf? A lion? He got a little snarky. A gun? Tokiyami shook his head. No. The most terrifying sound in the forest is when every living thing suddenly falls silent. Several students made sounds of comprehension. It was worse than that, Midoriya said suddenly. His voice was shaky. He brushed his ears with one hand, a nervous rabbit grooming. My quirk sensed what you were doing at the last second. At the last moment, it screamed like a woman in mortal terror, and then fell silent. He looked at Aizawa, and for the first time, Aizawa just felt just a tiny bit guilty. When my danger sense goes off like that, sudden and loud, it's a reflex. I can't help it. I punch, I kick, I fling something at what set it off, and I bolt away as hard as I can. Sometimes all four at once. It's like someone leaping away from a striking snake. Aizawa felt his head throb. Yes, important information, Midoriya. Thank you. He got to his feet and pulled up his remaining dignity. That was the only thing to do. Pretend everything was perfectly normal and go on. Very well, let's proceed with the assessments. The bleep happened here? A loud, grating voice demanded. The crowd of students parted and Bakugo made his appearance. What? Can't anybody... The blonde blaster stopped and looked at the rabbit boy. Midoriya looked nervous. Bakugo stepped closer. He squinted and his red eyes went wide. Deku? The tableau froze for a long second. Then Bakugo burst into raucous laughter. Deku? That's you? He cackled. Holy bleep, what the hell? You really did have a quirk, and you turned into a rabbit? Bakugo howled. Man, Deku, only you could find a way to be more worthless with a quirk than without. Ha 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 ha! He choked and spluttered, doubled over laughing. He wiped an eye. What the heck are you doing out here, Deku? Midoriya had his ears laid low and was standing very still. I'm in the hero course, Kachan, he said, with a small, cautious smile. Bakugo gave him what he obviously thought was a tolerant smirk. Sure you are. I'll believe that. You'd better believe it, Bakugo, Uraraka said. She looked unaccustomedly fierce. Midoriya is a student in Class 1A. He's in the hero course. Bakugo's smile vanished like a French fry at a fat farm. What? Ojiro coughed. In fact, as I recall, he beat your score by 10 points. The tailed martial artist said. Kachan. He what? Bakugo's head whipped around and he glared at Izuku with blazing eyes. He lunged at the boy, hands sparking. You what? Ah! Spat! Whoomp! Eraserhead looked down to where Bakugo lay in the grass, then up at Midoriya. Midoriya hastily put his fist behind his back. You're going to have to get that under control, Aizawa said sourly. Yes, sir. And that was the first chapter of El Ira. were they always going to be a couple? Were Zelda and Nip always going to be a couple? Well, I don't know. Zelda's creation was a spur of the moment because it was the slumber party arc, and I needed to add a meek little wallflower to the guests, and I thought, okay, what would be a meek little wallflower in Nip and Tuck's world? And I thought, okay, a porcupine, because a porcupine uh, would